Hi, I'm Paul Cleary, Ecosystem Architect at Venafi, and today I'll cover the true power of Venafi automation when it comes to TLS inspection solutions like Gigamon. In just a few minutes, we're going to configure the connection between Venafi and Gigamon, and then demonstrate the capabilities of the integration by simulating two new application deployments using a couple technologies that you might have heard of, F5 and Kubernetes. More and more, we see threats hiding in encrypted traffic. Now, maybe your applications are all secure, they're using machine identities already from Venafi. That's the relatively easy part. The platform is already automating the renewal of those certificates through whichever certificate authority the security team is configured, and the platform is also automatically provisioning those renewed certificates down to the applications, the load balancers, and all the other systems that ultimately use those certificates to secure traffic. But what about the inspection devices during that process? Perhaps application teams are deploying new applications out of band without looping in the proper security teams, leading to large numbers of unknown machine identities throughout the organization. Or maybe the application team renews the certificate themselves and then provisions it to the end application themselves as well. In that case, security teams actually did have visibility, but it was mistakenly removed due to manual processes. Without integrations like the one that we're about to see between Venafi and Gigamon, it would be up to each application team to ensure Gigamon administrators have the most recent version of every single certificate used for TLS inspection. In larger organizations, that can mean hundreds or thousands of certificates that now require manual intervention in an otherwise fully automated process. At the minimum, that creates a lot of unnecessary overhead, but take it a step further and you can start to get an idea about how easy it would be for an admin to simply miss one or accidentally forget to update a single configuration out of 100. It's those gaps that bad actors already understand and now are starting to target and exploit more and more. So it's never been more critical to automate provisioning of machine identities, not only to the end consumers, but also to necessary tooling like in TLS inspection devices. Slow manual processes need to adopt automation to eliminate human error and bottlenecks. Introducing automation also helps ensure that nothing is forgotten. Security teams have a complete inventory of all the machine identities used throughout the infrastructure of the organization. So now that we understand a bit about the problem and the solution, let's take a look at how easy it is to implement. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is get logged into the Venafi platform, and we're going to take a look at the certificate inventory and take a look at what we have already available to us. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to be focused strictly on my applications folder, which includes 5 subfolders as well. So I will highlight that and include subfolders, and we should have one certificate at this point in all of those folders. And so what we'll do is first set up a bulk provisioning job in just a minute that's going to take any certificate from those folders that we just took a look at, and anytime a new certificate gets created or an existing certificate is renewed, these bulk provisioning job that we'll configure is going to automatically provision those certificates to, in this case, a Gigamon inspection device, TLS inspection device. And so for that, let's take a look at the Gigamon appliance first, and we'll make sure that it doesn't have any certificates yet, because that's going to happen during this demo process. And so I actually do have a physical appliance here. It's my GigaView hc2.venafidemo.com. And if I look at the GigaSmart section, either of these SSL pages will work. I'm just going to look at the passive SSL, and the key store is really what we're after. And so as you can see, there's nothing in the key store currently. And so back at the Venafi platform, we don't have any jobs yet. And so the first thing that I really need to do is create that bulk provisioning job. And so as you can see, it's going to install many certificates and keys on a target device at the same time, minimizing the device interaction. So it will try and batch these as much as possible. So we'll create the job. I'm going to place the job configuration just in a folder that I call jobs. And we'll call it the Gigamon bulk provisioning demo. My target devices. Now this is going to be the Gigamon device that I actually want to target with this integration. So all certificates are going to be provisioned automatically to this device from anything in my source directory here. And in this case, that again is the application folder at the top level. That way it includes all of the subfolders underneath. Then you have some additional options here. You can include expired certificates or revoked certificates or historical certificates. For the purposes of the demo, I will include historical certificates. And so we'll click next here. You have the opportunity to run this job on a schedule or manually at any given time. I'm going to leave it set to manual for this demo. And then the last step here is identifying which driver you want to use for this provisioning job. And since this is a Gigamon appliance, it's pretty clear that we probably want to use this Gigamon driver. And as you can see, selecting that brings up some additional options that are necessary. And so one required field for the Gigamon integration is the cluster ID. And so what that really is asking for is this ID here, this URL IP address or host name or the identifier for the specific target gateway device, not just the Gigamon Fabric Manager. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that URL, go back here and name that as the cluster ID, and go ahead and create. And so at this point, if I go back to my jobs, nothing has run yet, right? So I will go ahead and click this run now. And what should happen is the Venafi platform is automatically going to do a search for any certificate that exists within that applications folder and any subfolder. So it will find this oi.venafidemo.com certificate and automatically provision it to Gigamon. And so if I refresh this page a couple of times, what we should see is this job will go from never run to run. And in the process that I've taken to explain it, it is already actually completed. And so if I go to my Gigamon appliance now and take a look again at the passive SSL section, hey, we see that certificate has now made its way to the Gigamon appliance, as well as all of the historical versions of that certificate in case a Gigamon administrator ever needed to roll back for any reason. Perfect. So that's an existing certificate. But what if we wanted to create a net new certificate in one of those application folders? And that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to switch over real quick to a Kubernetes cluster that I've got. And I've already configured Jetstack's Cert Manager to interact with Venafi. And so that's what we'll use to request a net new certificate for an application that could potentially be deployed within Kubernetes. And so I'll show you the command that I'm going to run here. We are using, again, Kubernetes to request a certificate for my eddy.venafidemo.com domain. We also are using Jetstack's annotations to enable a private key synchronization back to the Venafi platform and enable provisioning of that private key down to the inspection devices. And so the first thing that I'll do is apply that configuration. And this will start the process of Cert Manager reaching out to Venafi to issue that certificate and then synchronize that private key back with Venafi so that our bulk provisioning job that we just created can pick up that certificate and key and then push it down to Gigamon. And so real quick, if I take a look at this certificate that I just requested, we get a little bit of the history. We can see throughout the processing stages that the secret didn't exist, so it was created. The certificate was then created and passed back to Cert Manager. And then lastly, these last three here, it's saying that it does have the annotation on my config file, so the private key should be synchronized. We get a status that says the key was synchronized, and this is the certificate object within the Venafi platform that it was synchronized with, and then a final status that everything is up to date. And my guess is that by this point, if I were to do a refresh on this page here, we'll see that certificate, first of all, has made its way into Venafi's inventory, this eddy.venafidemo.com. And if I go back to my jobs, my guess is that if we click into this job, we'll see that indeed, a certificate has been provisioned via express run. So I didn't have to trigger anything for this to happen. The Venafi platform recognized that a certificate was created within my source directories, and it took the steps necessary to provision it down to Gigamon. And so if I come back here and do a refresh, we should see that that new certificate has now made its way to Gigamon and can be applied in inspection policies. Very similarly to that process, you might be an F5 administrator doing a deployment or a rollout for a new application within your infrastructure. And for that, the process is very similar. You'll get logged in. One second here. And so one of the integrations built by F5 to the Venafi platform is the ability for F5 administrators to renew and request net new certificates from Venafi directly from the BigIQ interface. So one of the things that I've already configured here is something called third-party CA management. So I've already configured my trust protection platform. We've already specified that those 5 folders we looked at earlier are available to our F5 administrators. We can see that my existing certificate is already in the F5 inventory, so this can be renewed by F5 admins if needed. But what we're going to do is create a net new certificate. And for this, I'm going to call it, let's say, elaine.venafidemo.com. I will select TPP, Trust Protection Platform, as the issuer, and then it asks us which policy folder we want to target. And this is another thing that is a benefit of the Venafi platform. It really abstracts a lot of the necessary subject metadata information for a certificate that an F5 administrator really doesn't need to care about. All they care about is the common name of their application, and all of this other stuff gets filled in automatically and can be locked if needed by the security team or the Venafi administrators. And so really, again, only thing that I need to specify here is the common name of my certificate, and in this case, a private key password, which will be used to encrypt that private key on its way back to BigIQ. Okay, so we'll save that. In the background, BigIQ is creating the private key, the CSR, sending those to Venafi, who will then send them off to whatever certificate authority has been configured by the Venafi admins. And in a matter of seconds, we have a certificate now back within the BigIQ inventory that can be attached to SSL profiles and deployed to virtual servers almost instantly. And that certificate, before it even makes it to an application, it's already in place on our Gigamon devices. And we'll just give this one more second to finish running. We should see this kick off automatically here. And there, it actually did it while I was talking. So we have a second certificate provisioned by Express Run. If I refresh this one more time, we see that certificate that was created on BigIQ has now automatically been provisioned to the Gigamon inspection device. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for watching and just remind you all to be sure to check out all the available Venafi Trust Protection Platform integrations at marketplace.venafi.com. Thanks.